things off, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Heather McCartney, who will be in conversation with our esteemed guest, dancer and choreographer Camille A. Brown. Heather McCartney started her career as a dancer at the renowned 92 New NY. Sorry, the rebranding gets me stuck every time. Not far from her East Harlem roots, before devoting 19 years to teaching dance in New York City public schools. Heather was among the first to be licensed in dance education by the city and state, and she helped establish dance education programs in small liberal arts and performing arts schools in Manhattan. In 2014, Heather became the Director of Dance and Education and Family Programs for the Joyce, where she works to uphold the high-quality dance residencies established by Joanne Robinson Hill, her predecessor. On a personal note, Heather has a keen and enviable sense of style. I am pleased to introduce her, and please join me in bringing her to the stage.
Good morning, everyone, my friends, my colleagues, everyone out there. Thank you so much. I have the pleasure of introducing to you a dancer, choreographer, multi-hyphenated person, Camille A. Brown, also a native New Yorker, and a student of our public school system. Come on up, Camille. Woohoo! On behalf of the Arts and Education Roundtable, I'd like to thank you for being our featured guest today. I'm particularly excited about having a conversation with you because we have our own history in the dance community ecosystem. And however, your story is so compelling, your trajectory from a student from community dance schools to co-director and choreographer and co-director in Met Opera production. We'll talk about that. And for those who don't know Camille A. Brown, I'd like to start off with some words that were very aptly written about your career by the dancer and researcher Teresa Ruth Howard. This was in our program book, and she writes, choreographer and director Camille A. Brown has built an expansive and lauded career spanning multiple genres, concert, commercial, musical theater, multiple genres in dance. Through dance and storytelling, her work celebrates and recontextualizes African American culture, its profundity, complexity, and brilliance, paying homage to its diasporic DNA. In 2012, Brown embarked on what would be an artistic pilgrimage to choreograph the narrative of African American humanity. Mr. Tolerance, that was in 2012. Black Girl Linguistic Play, that was in 2015. And Ink, that was in 2017. They took the audiences on a journey from oppression to liberation. I Am is the fourth installment of this body of work, and it's described as a love letter expressed through the body, written in the diasporic languages of West African dance, modern, jazz, tap, street, and hip-hop styles. Brown choreographs the spectrum of humanity, transporting audiences to the playground, to the street, the club, and church, where dancers physicalize an experience of speaking in tongues. And that's just one great example I thought was that nicely put your career in perspective, but we'll get into a lot about that. You dedicated your work when you were at the Joyce to 3 Black women who passed away in 2024 and whom you admired, the first being Judith Jamison, the noted dancer and artistic director of Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. The second was Georgiana Pickett, the former executive director of 651 Arts. And the third was our own Joanne Robinson Hill, who we're honoring today. So first I'd like to talk about Joanne and tell me how you first met and what influence she had on your early career.
Oh my gosh. Well, first, thank you for having me, and I always love being in conversation with you, so thank you for this opportunity.
Likewise.
So I first met Joanne when I was a dancer with Ronald K. Brown Evidence, and I joined the company in 2001, and I believe in 2002, it was my first time at the performing at the Joyce Theater, and we were immediately introduced to Joanne as the Director of Education, and I just felt this essence of just someone that really felt like a power and a necessity to make sure that education was a part of the programming.
Good.
And you felt that. And so whenever we did our performances, our student performances, Joanne was always there and always involved with people. I observe a lot, so I just saw how dedicated she was, really connected to us as dancers, really interested to know what our history and our background was, connected to making the connections of the West African, of the contemporary and the history, and naming that, and also just continuing to reiterate the importance of making sure that younger generations understand this work.
Yeah, great. And my first meeting of Joanne was when I was a dance educator for schools and bringing my students to the Joyce and seeing works on stage. But I also considered her a friend, a sister friend, and a mentor. She was the one who encouraged me to become more involved with the Roundtable, which ultimately led me to serve on its board and several of its committees in multiple ways. So she really encouraged me in different ways. I look to her as my North Star in arts education, but also being involved in having another community to learn and grow from. So I miss her a lot because who am I going to call now? But as we sit in front of this room of primarily artists and administrators and educators, I think they'd be interested in learning about your arts education in and out of schools. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, everybody move.
Your personal story.
My personal story. Okay, so I am originally from Jamaica, Queens, New York. I'm going to say the whole thing: Southeast Jamaica, New York, Queens, New York. And I attended Bernice Johnson Cultural Arts Center when I started when I was 4 years old. And my mom put me into the group called the 3 to 6 year olds. And she would always see that I loved watching like Soul Train or something like that, so she put me in. She loved musical theater too, and she saw that I loved that, so she put me into dance school. She didn't want to overwhelm me, so she only put me in one class. The 3 to 6 year olds could only take 3 classes. And she said that after the first day, she saw my face when all the other kids went to their next class, and she saw the disappointment. Aww. And so she said, okay, well, next time I'll put her in all 3 classes. So she put me in classes. It was ballet, tap, and African. And so I was there until I was 11 years old. And then one of my teachers, Carolyn DeVore, started her own dance school, DeVore Dance Center in Queens. So I went, so I went there. And I was there through high school. And during high school, I went to LaGuardia, Fiorella H. LaGuardia, also known as the Fame School. And in my sophomore year, I went to the Ailey School on scholarship. So I was basically in school from 8 to 9 p.m., 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. And I had modern dance and ballet in the morning, and then I would go across the street. Ailey was on 61st at the time, and I would have modern and ballet again. So I had 2 modern dance classes and 2 ballet dance classes every day, 5 days a week. And also got a chance to work with other choreographers as well. And when you start dance, or I can only speak for myself, when I started dance, I felt the love and I felt the joy. You know, we were doing the activation that Susan led, and that's what I started out with. And then as I got older, this idea of the ideal body was introduced to me by teachers, not all of my teachers. So I, in some cases, was put on diets because I was told that I was too big. So the joy was still there, but it also became a hardship too. And thinking that, oh, well, maybe I have to be something else in order to be accepted into this thing that I love doing so much. And I had my teachers who, and I call them my angels. I had the teachers that were focused on me just wanting to be a good dancer.
Yes.
And then I had the other teachers that, because of this ideal body that I clearly, for them, did not fit into, I was ignored. And so we would literally, they would correct the person in front of me and then walk past me and correct the person behind me. And I had a lot of mentors and my teachers, and I would always, if something happened, I would always ask them what I should do. And in one particular class, the teacher was not correcting me. He wasn't giving me any notes. And I was talking to one of my mentors, Roger C. Jeffrey, who to this day is one of my mentors, and he said, well, just take everybody's note.
Use it for yourself.
Just take the note. Even if it's not to you, just take the note and see what you can get from it. So I took that, and that helped me through it. And so high school was, I had my really highs, and I also had those lows. And it was time to graduate, and we were all excited told, well, Juilliard was across the street, so most of us were interested in going to Juilliard, North Carolina School of the Arts, NYU. And so I auditioned for everything. I personally wanted to go to North Carolina School of the Arts because that's where Debbie Allen wanted to go. And so that is my hero. So I said, wherever she wants to go, I'm going too. And I auditioned for Juilliard, and I got waitlisted. And again, I went to my mentor. And because it seemed like everybody in the class got in. Except you. Except me.
Yeah.
And so I went to him and I said, oh man, I don't know what to do. Like, I really want to be a good dancer. And again, Roger says, the school does not make you, you make you.
Powerful.
And so I received it again. And I went into North Carolina School of the Arts with that in mind. And I thought that because I was going to college and it was something new, that I would be sort of starting this new, okay, we don't have to talk about body type anymore, I can start new. Nope, I was called into the nutritionist's office, and I got put on diets, and it all started happening again. And I asked my mom, I was really interested in transferring at that time, and I had just got there, and she said, okay, well, let the semester finish, and then, but in the meantime, find something that you love and that can get you through things. And at the time, I found that it was my improvisation and composition classes.
Where you could be the boss.
But I didn't know that at first. I actually rejected improv and composition.
Is that right?
Because I was so conditioned as a dancer to receive information and then to deliver the information. And then this was an opportunity, and Trish Casey was my first comp teacher at NCSA. She was actually asking us to think about what we wanted to say and share that, yes, it is the voice of the choreographer, but you yourself can be the choreographer too. And that was eye-opening to me. And it became the thing that helped me push through. And by the time I got to senior year, I worked with amazing choreographers, and some of the body things went away. And I was excited to work with choreographers, but I had also found another love of mine, and that was choreography. Because at that point, I realized that I didn't have to wait for anyone to tell me whether I could dance or not. I could create my own space. That might not have necessarily been on the stage, but it could have been in the rehearsal room, in my college dorm room. So I was able to find my own creative spaces and power through that. And I wasn't really thinking about choreography as something to do because I was focused on being a dancer. And I was excited about that. And so I graduated, and you know, the next thing you do is go on auditions. So the Lion King was having an audition. I went, stood on the line was wrapped around the corner.
Right.
And one of Ron K. Brown's dancers crosses, and we hadn't seen each other in years, and he said, I told him I had just graduated, and he said, Ron is looking for a woman, and you should call him. And I said, okay, and I had met Ron throughout the Ailey School a couple of times, and he gave me Ron's number, and I called, I introduced myself. Ron invited me into the studio. He was teaching at Perry Dance at the time, and I immediately went to the back of the class because I was so nervous because Ron's work is rooted in West African dance. And I had West African training, but it was from my dance schools. And so there was a period of time where I was really, my education really consisted of the European aesthetic. And so it was having to go back to my roots there. And so I was nervous. I didn't want to look crazy out here. So I went to the back and I did, you know, the best that I could and just danced.
Yeah.
And he invited me back the next day, and I did the same thing. He invited me to rehearsal the next day. And then, I don't know if he does this now, but he had this ritual of giving someone a T-shirt, and that was the way that he was asking you to join the company.
Oh, okay.
So he gave me he gives me this T-shirt, and I'm sitting there like, I don't know what to do with this. I know I'm supposed to say thank you, but I don't know if this is like a thank you goodbye or a thank you hello. I don't know. And so the dancer said, no, that's his way of it, you know, inviting you into the company.
Yes,
So that was really amazing. And I joined in 2001. And I was focused on that, and internet was not a thing in 2001, and so I got a letter from my college friend, Amy Page, who is now my costume supervisor for my company, and she said, she wrote in the letter, and she had a Hubbard Street 2 flyer competition. And Hubbard Street had a second company at the time where they had it was called the Hubbard Street 2 competition, and they invited 3 choreographers to set a work. And she said she thought that I should go for it. And I hadn't talked to her since we graduated, and this was like 2002 now. And I was so moved that she thought of me that I really submitted really for her.
Just for her.
And so I put together my college solo, my college group piece, submitted that, and I got it. And so that was my first professional commission.
Choreographing, good.
And so I thought, oh wow, maybe this is something I can do. And then I thought, oh, but I have to take an alias because I know that I'm not going to be treated the same way as men choreographers do. Because while I was immediately connecting to my voice, I realized throughout my education that a lot of people that I was told to dance with or be in their circles were all men. And so it helped me to start seeing the other, particularly black female choreographers that were out working. And then I started going back and pulling out my college books and just rereading and realizing, oh wow, Alvin Ailey only had a paragraph. Oh wow, Pearl Primus isn't even mentioned.
In the book, yeah.
Oh wow,
yeah.
where's Bilbo Jangles? Like just starting to make all of these connections.
And where, if I
yes.
could interrupt for a
Yes.
minute, there's a lot to unpack in your journey, starting from community dance schools.
Yeah.
And the support you got there.
Yeah.
And then the arts experience. I don't know, if as a student here in New York City, did you, like in your middle school and elementary school, did you have different arts experiences? Was there a music program, a visual art program in your schools?
Yes, so I went to Catholic school elementary school, St. Pius X, that is no longer in existence. But I took clarinet. I played the clarinet when I was younger too.
Oh, I played the clarinet.
Yeah, so that's what I did during that time.
Okay. And then your journey in high school and college, and the whole body, now we call it body shaming, really.
Yeah.
But the particular aesthetic that they were looking for, and who you were, that taking ownership of yourself, and I mean that could be very defeatist. And people, I think, are more conscious of that now, and how that can be destructive to someone's spirit and someone's personal self-image of themselves. So it's good. The other thing that you mentioned is the role of mentors. It's good that you had a mentor or someone that you could speak to about what you were going through.
Yeah.
And it's good that you had a network of Amy Page and others who were looking out for you, or sometimes it's just serendipity, you know, that, oh, I was on this line and I met this person. I mean, that's how Judith Jamison got into Alvin Ailey. You know, she was coming from an audition, and this man she didn't even know selected her to be audition for his company.
Yes.
Right? So all of those support systems in a way helped you get to, and your own advocacy, number one, and the power of being able to tell your own story and have your own voice through choreography. Sounds like it got its beginnings, its seedlings, when you were doing Hubbard Street too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also the power of notes. And I realized that when I was in dance school at Bernice Johnson and Carolyn DeVore, that our notes weren't just move to the right, move to the left, be more powerful. They always connected it to something about life. And there were times where there were the, okay, jump higher. And then there were times where they would give the note and it would be something that was connected to a life experience, and we would just sit there and listen. And they would talk for 20, 30 minutes about this. And so even though I had those moments of discouragement, I was able to access those times when we did talk about pushing through obstacles and never giving up and finding a space, and always, regardless of whether they don't tell you, learn the part, take every note, do this. And so those were like reminders that I constantly played in my head in order to keep going forward.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
And again, these were not all of my teachers,
Right,
You know,
right.
But you always remember
You
the ones
gravitate
that
to the
you
ones,
know.
that's right.
You always remember those.
As part of your dance company, Camille A. Brown and Dancers mission, you seem to be addressing the opportunities that you wish you had by making available several initiatives and workshops that are deeply rooted in identity. Under the umbrella of community engagement, you have the initiative called Everybody Move, which inspires collective action through the art of social dance. Your teaching artist mantra is social dance for social change. Some of the initiatives are Black Men Moving, Black Girl Spectrum, Black Liberation Moves, Every Elder Moves. You have a prison, you've done a prison outreach, and a Journey Through Juba workshop and The Gathering. These are just a few of the initiatives. You want to pick one or two, or you want to talk about the whole Everybody Moves? I think people would be interested in knowing about that.
Yeah, I'll pick Black Girl Spectrum. So I was working on this piece called Black Girl Linguistic Play that Heather mentioned earlier, and one of the things that I said was, I always love titles, and I love coming up with them. And I wanted to call it Black Girl because I wanted people to know who they were going to see. But I also knew that in doing that some people may not come to the show.
True.
Some people may come to the show.
True.
You don't know.
True.
And also I knew that I wanted to do something that was rooted in social dance and gesture, and it wasn't of the European aesthetic. And so I didn't know how it was going to be received. But I wanted the education aspect to still live on, just in case the piece didn't live on. And so I created the initiative Black Girl Spectrum, where we connected with groups in New York City, and then also when we were on tour, and taught some of the social dances, and then shared about the gestural information.
Give us a gesture.
That's my gesture. That's my gesture, yes. And so how do you use gesture and movement and to speak?
Yes.
And what is that language?
Yes.
And thankfully, the piece was a success, and I was able to have a Black girl perform Black girl, and then also have this initiative. So that was wonderful because they were both in conversation with each other. And then I thought, okay, well, let's not stop here. I was doing another piece I was creating by this point called Ink, and there's one section that is kind of a boys to men thing where the two young men start out as young boys and they go through this ritual of growth, and then they turn into adults. And so I thought, well, let me do the same thing again, because you never know. And so I created Black Men Moving. And then again, thankfully, that piece was a success as well, so they were also able to live in conversation with each other. And then I said, well, let's get everybody. So then I created Everybody Move, and then that's why we have the initiative.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was really like fear. It was really created out of fear.
Out of fear. You want to speak a little bit more about this, the fear
Well,
part?
fear of, I think when you create work, you don't know if it's going to
How it's
should
really
be shown
received.
once
Right.
or 25 years from now.
Right,
You
right.
just don't know.
Right.
And it's very much, now that I'm in musical theater, it's very much like musical theater. You can work on a show for 13 years and it opened and it closed 2 weeks later. So what are you doing in preparation just in case that thing that you can't control continues to live on? And so it was that fear of possibly not having the piece live on that I was able to grow something else. And I feel like a lot of things that have happened in my life have come because of either fear or failure. And those things, fear has led to growth, failure has led to liberation. Like there was always like a push through moment based on how I thought I was being restricted.
Yeah, how you preconceived that. Well, I wanted to share with the audience a description of your company, Camille A. Brown and Dancers. It's a Bessie Award-winning New York-based company that soars through history like a whirlwind. It's been recognized for blending modern, hip-hop, African, tap, and social dance to forge riveting works that ripple with energy, urgency, and powerful theatricality. Your company claims Black narratives with historically informed and thought-provoking repertory on race, culture, and identity. The company has toured its rep with live music to 74 cities in the U.S. and internationally. Your company performs for over 20,000 people and serves 5,000 and more engagement participants annually through free community programs that elevate African diaspora aesthetics. In May 2020, your company launched its Social Dance for Social Change virtual school, offering free online artist and scholar lectures, notable speakers, and social dance classes led by company dancers. To date, the virtual school has 98,000 participants and continues to grow. This audience is filled with arts makers and arts educators and deciding on ways to define, refine, and fine-tune their artistic practice and leadership roles. And I'm always say leadership comes in multiple forms, and so I came across an interview that you did with the Keenan Institute for the Arts on artist as leader, and you were asked several questions. So that transition from dancer to leader is a moment. And could you talk about that moment when you transitioned from dancer to dance maker and then to dance leader?
Yeah. So what comes to mind is when I transitioned into leadership, I knew that my dancers were also interested in being choreographers, and I knew that they were looking at me as an example. And at the time, this was in 2015, I became a TED Fellow, and part of the TED Fellow fellowship was that they had this thing called TED Coach, and TED Coach, it's an opportunity for you to get free coaching, 12 sessions, and they sent a list of everything, business management, and you would be able to choose. And I chose leadership because I knew that that was the position that I was standing in, and I also knew that my dancers were interested in doing it as well. And so I specifically asked for a black female. And it took them a minute to get one.
Okay, I was gonna say, who'd you get?
but they came back. It took a minute, but they came back, and they connected me with Val Williams, and it was life-changing.
Wow.
Because I thought that when I started it, it was okay, personal, and then business, leadership. And what I found was your leadership and the decisions that you make are based on who you are at your core. And so they could never be separate, because how you treat people is based on your core values. How you respond to a certain situation is how you respond in your personal situations.
True.
And so it was mind-boggling, and I throughout time, because it's been 10 years, I still have a black female leadership coach, and I've had 3, and it's just been really wonderful, really wonderful.
It's good always to have someone you can talk to or hold your hand,
Yes.
or bounce ideas and get advice from.
Yes.
So you know that you're not working alone and that you're not alone.
Right.
And I think that's important for any aspect that you do, teaching artist or administrator or educator. It's always good to have someone. And I admire the way you're navigating these multiple creative spaces in such a prodigious and superb fashion. Your reputation as a choreographer for companies like Urban Bush Women, Hubbard Street 2, ALE 2, Philadelphia, had already been established when our paths crossed at Alvin Ailey. You'd walk by my office, well, I think you were probably rehearsing some works there, and I'd always want to hear what you were up to. And I distinctly remember you telling me about your ideas behind a new work, which was Mr. Tolerance, and that was in part influenced by Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow. It had some influence on your ideas, and Spike Lee's Bamboozled. Oh, by the way, when Spike Lee came, I was sitting behind him because he hadn't seen your work, Tolerance.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tapped him on his shoulder. Did you know that, you were the inspiration, a bit of the inspiration behind your work? And he said, no, I didn't know that, with his...
Yes, I had his,
Did he come
his
backstage?
daughter at Bates Festival.
Oh,
as
you
a
did?
student.
Oh, at
Yes.
a student? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I was actually giving a talk, and I was talking about Spike Lee's work, and I didn't know it. She came up to me afterwards and said, Spike Lee is my dad. And it was just... Okay, at Bates Dance Festival, here we are. So, yeah.
Well, Mr. Tolerance eventually garnered a Vesey Award and ended up being the first part of a trilogy of your dance works based on race, culture, and identity. So I'd like to know what fuels you to continue creating your own work through the ever-changing social and political climates, especially around gender, race, and identity. What fuels you to keep going in your work with the company?
Yeah, it's my space.
Mm-hmm.
And
Claim it. Mm-hmm.
What'd you say?
I said, and you're claiming it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I work in Broadway and I work in opera, and those are stepping into other spaces, which I love doing.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also nothing like you stepping into your own space and tapping into what you want to do and telling the stories the way you want to tell them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why, and it is very challenging to run a company and also to have a career in commercial work.
Mm-hmm.
But I always go back to, this is my home base. My company is where, like, this is what fuels me. And
Feeds
this is
your
what
soul.
brings me joy. This is the root of the joy.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, when you'd come into the office, I remember you mentioning that you were delving into musical theater, and you were, at that time you were working on The Fortress of Solitude.
Yes,
that was the musical at the Public Theater. And wow, when I see how your career has developed, I'm just shocked. I'm shocked and so proud of you. I know there's a history of choreographers who have traversed concert dance and musical theater.
Yes.
But you steadily advanced through the genre, and I'm just going to read off, to choreograph for 7 off-Broadway musicals, 2 of which moved to Broadway, and to Saki Shange's For Colored Girls Who Have Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Was Enough.
Well, I directed that one.
You directed,
Yep.
well, but off-Broadway
I was the
choreographer, and then when you came to...
I was director choreographer.
And you were director choreographer,
Yes.
the first black woman to do that in a Broadway production in 6 decades. The work was praised by critics and got nominations for the Drama Desk Award and the Lucille Lortel Awards, and that piece got 7 Tony nominations, including Best Direction of a Play and Best Choreography. The second off-Broadway production moved from the Public Theater to the Schubert last year, and that was Hell's Kitchen. That is a musical loosely based on the musical journey and influences of another local public school student, Alicia Keys. Other productions that you've contributed to may sound familiar to this audience: A Streetcar Named Desire, Once on This Island, Much Ado About Nothing, Choir Boy. Are you people hearing all of these things? Hell's Kitchen, and now Gypsy, starring the great Audra McDonald, which is, now, so this is wild, which is wild, okay? On one side of the street of 44th Street is Hell's Kitchen. On the other side of the street is Gypsy. You're in the effing middle of, if you stand in the middle of 44th Street, how does that feel?
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, you look to the right, it's Hell's Kitchen. You look to the left, it's Audra McDonald, and same choreographer. That's wild. I don't know if that's ever happened before. How does that feel? Are there words? Is there a gesture?
I don't know if there are words that
Understood.
can match how that feels.
Understood.
But I can say that it makes me think that every hardship was for a reason, and it was creating a path where I could stand there and look and go, wow, I have 2 shows on Broadway. And 20 years ago, I was sitting in my college dorm room trying to find my voice. And so I always go back to that. And so when I see those things, when I see the successes, I celebrate them, and I'm continuing to work on celebrating them, but I also know what it took to get there.
That little girl from South,
You know?
from Jamaica, Queens.
You lost your mic.
Uh-oh. Hello.
You want mine?
I was saying, how that girl from Jamaica, Queens must feel when she stands and looks at all of her accomplishments. I mean, I was on your website and saw there were like 73 honors, nominations, award-winning accolades on your website starting from 2006. And your most recent being a nomination from the NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Short-Form Documentary, Camille A. Brown, Giant Steps. So am I dropping some news? Well, it's out in the public now. You want to talk about that? This documentary that's coming out this year?
Yes, it's a short it was a short documentary that is coming on PBS, and I am very honored. Very honored to have it on PBS, and I know that there are a list of honors, but I always remember the no's.
I think you grow more from the nose, do you think?
You grow more from the nose. And I remember there was one time, and this is a combination of like education and you and me realizing that there's always somebody watching, is that there was one musical that I was up for and I didn't get it. This was about 7 years ago, and I was really upset, and I was teaching in New Orleans, and I was across the street from the building, and I was having a conversation with my agent, and I'm crying, and I really wanted it, but I had to go in and teach this class. And so I, wiped my face, and I went in and I taught the class. And then afterwards, the kids, they were about 9 to 10-year-olds, and the kids wanted to take pictures. And there was one young black girl that took a picture with me, and she walked away, and I was talking to other people, but I was also watching her too. And she stopped and looked at the picture, and then she looked at me. And I always choke up when I say this because she looked at me the way that I looked at black women that I looked up to. And I immediately pulled myself together and said, you have to keep going because this is not just about you. And so that's what I think about. I think about the journey, and everybody doesn't always see the journey. They see the list of the accolades, but you don't see the walk, and you don't see the climb, and you don't see the times when people have fallen in order to rise.
Well, I could go on and on talking to you. You're one of my favorite people, and sitting in front of an audience of my favorite people, too. I do want to leave time for Q&A, though, so let's get that started. I do want to, while we get the mics ready, there was one question that was asked of our guest yesterday. How do you take care of your heart? How do you take care, what self-care do you do for you?
That's a work in progress. It is a work in progress. But what I feel like I'm doing now is if there's anything that's negative or something that can potentially slow me down, I do this.
So I think we
Want
have
to
time.
have questions for Camille?
Yeah, we maybe have time for 2 questions. Coming right over this way.
Hello, so I learned of you through my elementary and middle school friend, Cal Abraham.
Yeah, I got it, yes.
Love. And when he got his MacArthur Fellowship, I was so proud of him. And then when I learned of you, it really was just a comment. I've been trying to come see you for years now, and I either didn't have the money or wasn't in my schedule. But I got the money now, so I gotta come see you. Thank you so much. I was so happy when I heard you were gonna be here.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And time for one more.
I think so. Any questions?
In the
I
front.
see one over there. I'm coming. All right, over here.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Heather and Camille. It's so lovely to hear you all talk today and to hear about your story, Camille, is very inspiring to me as a teaching artist, choreographer, dancer. I'm 24, and so just being able to like listen to you and your trajectory is very inspiring to me, knowing that like bumps are normal,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know if I have a question, but I'm appreciative of your free programs. I was just accepted into the mentorship program.
Great.
Great. And it's been really lovely so far. And I just hope that in the future you continue to prosper the way that you have, and I hope that you continue to share your light.
Thank you. Who's your mentor?
My mentor is Beatrice Capote.
Oh, yes, okay. So I have a mentorship program that thank you so much for being a part of it, that consists of my dancers and people that I know within the field. And so we pair them up with students or teachers, and they have about 4 sessions. And it's just an opportunity to stay connected to the community and to continue building.
Well, I think to wrap it up and bring it full circle, I think Joanne Robinson Hill would just love the fact that we're having this conversation here in front of the Roundtable. She's influenced us both in different ways, and her light shines throughout many people in arts and education. And so thank you so much for being in conversation with us and me. And please, folks, I didn't even mention Porgy and Bess, your director or choreographer for the Met Opera in December, okay? So get the tickets are on sale. Tickets are on sale. Get it now. And we just love and want to see you continue and wish you all the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Let's give them a big round of applause. I see you. Thank you both.